My name is Natasha Wilson, and I'm 33 years old. For as far back as I can remember, I've often been an afterthought in my family. My younger sister Jessica was always the golden child, never able to do wrong in the eyes of my parents. Meanwhile, I struggled to even get them to watch their only grandchildren while I faced a crucial emergency surgery following complications from my husband's death 6 months prior. As I clutched my phone with trembling hands, sitting in the hospital room at Las Vegas Medical Center with my 2-year-old twins Ethan and Emily playing quietly in the corner, my mother's voice echoed through via video call. "Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Elton John tickets for months," she yelled, her indifference more painful than the excruciating abdominal pain I felt. Despite discovering internal bleeding that required immediate attention, my parents were more concerned with enjoying Christmas Eve with Jessica. I had been financially supporting my parents ever since they took early retirement 3 years ago, sending $2,500 every month like clockwork to help with their mortgage and expenses, even after James, my husband, passed away. I couldn't believe how foolish I was to think families should support each other out of love and duty, only to be met by my dad's harsh words. "You're becoming a real nuisance and burden, Natasha. We're retired now, and we deserve to enjoy our lives without your constant problems," he said. As tears silently fell onto the hospital blanket, the nurse Valerie gently squeezed my shoulder. "My friend Olivia is a professional nanny who specializes in childhood trauma. Let me call her for you," she offered kindly, a stark contrast to my parents' callousness. The thought of leaving my twins with people who saw them as burdens terrified me, but not as much as the possibility of losing them if the surgery went wrong. With pain searing through my body and disappointment weighing heavily on my heart, I made the decision. "Yes, please call her," I told Valerie. I needed to cut the poisonous ties with those who raised me, but never truly loved me. Memories of my overlooked childhood flashed over me, recalling how Jessica always received all the attention. Even when I graduated college with honors, my parents barely acknowledged it because Jessica was cast in a local commercial that same weekend. James had been my rock, understanding the pain of family disappointment, having been estranged from his father for years. He always said we would build our own family, one that knows how to love, and we did, creating a warm home filled with laughter and acceptance. But 6 months ago, a drunk driver stole him away, leaving me to raise our children alone, all while battling depression and grief. Valerie soon returned with news that her friend Olivia would arrive within the hour. "She's amazing with kids," Valerie assured me. She used to work with trauma victims at the Children's Hospital before becoming a private nanny. Concern crept into my voice when I asked how much this would cost. Medical bills were already piling up since James's insurance had limitations. "Don't worry about that now," Valerie said. "Let's focus on getting you ready for surgery." Nevertheless, I was worried. I thought of the $2,500 I was scheduled to send to my parents next week, money that could help pay for childcare instead. This thought kindled a flame of self-preservation, long extinguished. When Olivia arrived, she was everything Valerie promised: kind, professional, and connecting immediately with the twins. As hospital staff prepared me for surgery, I asked Valerie for my phone one more time. With shaky hands, I sent 2 messages. The first to my bank, canceling all future automatic transfers to my parents' account, and the second to my parents: I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Don't contact me again. Being wheeled toward the operating room, I felt a sense of liberation and hope for a future where my children and I would be loved and cherished. Through the haze of pain and fear, an unexpected sense of freedom emerged. The surgery had been successful, yet it left me more debilitated than I had anticipated. My stay extended to 5 days in the hospital, drifting between consciousness, with immense gratitude for Olivia. She went above and beyond, staying with the twins in my room during the day and taking them to my apartment at night. In one of my clearer moments, I noticed my phone blinking with notifications, 27 missed calls, and many text messages from my parents and Jessica. The messages followed a familiar pattern of confusion, anger, and desperate pleas regarding their mortgage payment. Not once did they inquire about my surgery or the twins' well-being. My father's final message was particularly revealing. You can't just cut us off like this. We've planned a cruise next month, and the tickets are non-refundable. However, Jessica's messages appeared different. She seemed genuinely puzzled. Mom and Dad just told me you were having a minor procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money? It hit me then that my parents had misinformed Jessica about the seriousness of my situation to justify their preference for a concert over their grandchildren. I decided to tell her the truth, sending her the whole story, even though I was still recovering from the medication. Her response was immediate. "Oh my God, Natasha, I had no idea it was an emergency surgery. They told me you were just being dramatic about a routine checkup. I would have watched the twins if I'd known. I'm so sorry." I believed her. Jessica wasn't heartless. She grew up under parents who made her feel that her needs came first. Hopefully, this revelation would help her realize who our parents truly were. By the time I was discharged, I had made several decisions. First, I enlisted Olivia part-time to assist with the twins during my recovery. Second, I contacted a lawyer to draft a will naming a trusted friend as their guardian, certainly not my parents. Third, I blocked my parents' numbers, allowing limited contact from Jessica as I evaluated her sincerity. The financial implications of my decision were substantial. The $2,500 monthly payment to my parents was nearly a third of my income as a graphic designer. Without this burden, I could actually afford proper child care and maybe even restore the emergency fund depleted after James's death. That night, lying in my bed with the twins asleep in their room, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was guilt, an ingrained feeling that I was wrong for prioritizing myself and my children. There was fear about managing recovery while raising two toddlers. However, there was also an emerging sense of self-respect. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "I just had a huge fight with Mom and Dad about how they treated you. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow?" Perhaps I wasn't entirely alone. 2 weeks post-surgery, I was gradually regaining strength. The incision site still throbbed with pain upon sudden movements, but I managed better daily. Olivia proved invaluable, arriving each morning to help with the twins as I worked from home. My graphic design clients were remarkably understanding of my limited availability, and I was grateful for the opportunity to work remotely, staying close to my children. Jessica visited twice, bringing healthy meals and spending time with the twins. Our conversations started cautiously, but gradually grew more candid. She began sharing her own experiences with our parents. "They always made it seem like you were choosing to distance yourself from the family," she admitted one evening, as we watched the twins play. "I never realized they were pushing you away." I was beginning to see another side of my sister, one that had been obscured by years of manipulation from our parents. While I wasn't ready to completely trust her yet, I appreciated her efforts. Then came the knock on the door I had half expected. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing outside. My mother clutched her designer purse, and my father stood with arms crossed, with frustration etched on his face. I hesitated, heart pounding, before opening the door slightly to speak through the gap. "What do you want?" I inquired, my voice steadier than expected. "Natasha, darling, we've been so worried," my mother began, her sugary tone immediately raising my defenses. "You haven't answered our calls, and we needed to check on you and the twins." "We're fine," I replied flatly. "Now, if that's all—" "It's not all," my father interrupted, pushing slightly against the door. "We need to discuss this ridiculous financial situation. The bank called us about our mortgage payment. We had to dip into our cruise savings to cover it." The audacity was breathtaking. No questions about my recovery or any concern for their grandchildren, only requesting financial support. I mentioned cutting off funds. I asserted I meant it, but my mother implored, her tone climbing higher. "Sweetie, your father and I have grown reliant on that money. We've arranged our lifestyle around your pledge to assist us." I reiterated, dazed. "My pledge? I've been sending funds out of guilt and duty, yet you couldn't watch your grandchildren during my critical surgery." My father's expression darkened. "That's unjust, Natasha. We had plans. Plans more crucial than my children's safety, more vital than my life." I challenged, anger building. Do you realize the doctor mentioned I might not survive the surgery? Did you ever inquire? Their silence spoke volumes. My mother whispered with dramatic flair. We made one error. Are you truly going to punish us so? This isn't punishment, Mom. It's consequence, I admittedly said, a peculiar calm overtaking me. I've spent my life seeking your approval and support, and at my direst moment, you picked Elton John tickets over aiding me. My father interjected, demanding, "We're your parents." "And I'm a parent too," I retorted. "I'd never treat Ethan and Emily as you've treated me." Just then, Emily wandered in holding her stuffed giraffe. My mother swiftly changed tactics. "There's my precious grandbaby," she cooed, bending down. Grandma brought gifts. Emily, unfamiliar with these nearly strangers, retreated, gazing at me with apprehension. "I think you should leave," I quietly stated. "When I'm ready to talk, if ever, I'll reach out." "But the money," my father began, "is no longer your concern," I finished, gently closing the door. The following morning, my parents returned fortified by my Aunt Patty, my mother's sister, and usual family mediator. "Natasha, sweetheart, be reasonable," Aunt Patty entreated from the other side of my unopened door. "Your parents are struggling without your support. They managed financially for years before I began aiding them," I replied through the door. "They chose early retirement, aware their savings were insufficient." My mother's voice cut in. "We made those choices because you promised help. We've had to cancel our cruise, and might lose the house now." Their attempts at manipulation were clear, now that I had distanced myself from the guilt they had encased me in for years. When had I promised lifelong support? I had offered help temporarily post-retirement, which they had twisted into a permanent expectation. "Mom, Dad, I'm recovering from major surgery and caring for 2 toddlers. This conversation ends here," I asserted adamantly, walking away from the door, ignoring their persistent knocking and pleas. Later, my father sent a group email to the entire extended family portraying me as abandoning them. It mentioned how I deserted them during their need after all they sacrificed for me, while conveniently omitting their refusal to assist with the twins during my emergency surgery, painting me as a thankless daughter. What they hadn't expected was the backlash. My cousin Michael, residing nearby, replied to all, "Uncle Robert, didn't you just purchase a new boat last month? And Aunt Diana, wasn't that a new diamond tennis bracelet at Thanksgiving?" Numerous family members chimed in, many messaging me privately for details. Even Aunt Patty called, confessing, "I had no idea about your surgery. They told me it was something routine, you were exaggerating to punish them financially." Meanwhile, Jessica had fully supported me after witnessing parental behavior firsthand, and aided in crafting a factual reply to the family thread simply stating, "I underwent emergency surgery with significant complication risks. My parents refused to care for my children as they had concert tickets. I'm focusing on my recovery and managing my twins without added strain." The ensuing support was staggering. Michael's wife delivered homemade meals. A distant cousin I barely knew offered part-time babysitting services gratis, and Jessica started spending weekends with her niece and nephew while aiding my recuperation. Most unexpectedly, Valerie, whom I met at the hospital, linked me to a support group for young widowed parents. Their initial session was virtual, allowing my home participation, and for the first time since James's passing, I felt genuinely understood by those who had trodden my path. Concurrently, my parents' financial situation degenerated swiftly. Indeed, they had been living beyond their means, relying heavily on my monthly contributions to uphold their lifestyle filled with travels and luxury buys. Jessica unveiled they had taken a second mortgage a year ago to fund their boat, mistakenly assuming I would continue to cover their primary mortgage indefinitely. Jessica was in disbelief after assisting them with their financial review, claiming they were not truly destitute, just overspent. They could have been fine if they sold the boat and vacation timeshare. As their increasingly frantic messages and emails persisted, my emotional grip on the situation weakened. In the ruins of their treachery, I was reconstructing a new foundation, one built on mutual support and genuine care instead of obligation. A month after my surgery, a significant and unexpected event took place. My parents received a notice of foreclosure. Jessica called to inform me, her voice tinged with both concern and exasperation. She shared that they were in full panic mode, with the bank granting them 60 days to catch up on payments or face losing the house. What about their retirement savings? I asked, balancing Emily on my knee while Ethan napped. Jessica explained that most of their funds had been used up. They spent lavishly on that boat and had invested the remainder in some unreliable scheme recommended by Dad's golfing friend, resulting in substantial losses. I'm not suggesting you help them, Natasha, Jessica sighed. I just thought you should be aware. Later that night, I was bombarded with desperate text messages from both parents, abandoning any facade of concern for my welfare and plainly imploring for financial aid. My mother's message was particularly illuminating. We never believed you would really cut us off. We thought you'd get through your anger and start sending money again after a couple of weeks. Their presumption that my boundaries weren't firm infuriated me. After years of prioritizing their needs and enduring their mistreatment, they had never truly respected me. In the meantime, my life was evolving in unexpected directions. The support group became a key support, connecting me to parents facing similar challenges. It was there I met Diana, a real estate agent whose husband had succumbed to cancer 2 years prior, leaving her with a 3-year-old son. She helped me explore options I hadn't considered before, such as selling my overcrowded apartment and using the equity to relocate to a more affordable area with better childcare options. I also embarked on a small side venture designing memorial websites, inspired by the one I'd created in memory of James. Several support group members commissioned sites, and word spread quickly. For the first time since becoming a widow, I felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. The stark contrast between my personal growth and my parents' decline became glaringly clear when they showed up at my apartment unannounced, armed with a detailed spreadsheet outlining their debts. We need $144,000 to cover the mortgage and stave off foreclosure, my father stated, his authoritative voice now laced with desperation. I invited them inside, not out of obligation, but to hear their viewpoint now that they were truly facing consequences. What about selling the boat? I gestured for them to sit at my modest dining table. My father objected. We take a loss, my mother added quickly. And the timeshare? We've tried, but the market is terrible, she explained. Besides, those are our retirement luxuries. I almost laughed at the irony of it all. Luxuries you cannot sustain, I remarked. We could afford them with your assistance, my father interjected, his tone hardening. It's the least you owe us considering everything we've done for you. What precisely have you done for me? I asked quietly, the question hovering like a challenge. At that moment, the twins waddled into the room, Ethan clutching his favorite truck and Emily joyfully babbling. My parents' expressions softened instantly. There are our precious babies, my mother exclaimed, reaching for Emily, who hid behind my legs. They don't know you, I stated plainly. You've seen them 3 times in their lives. You opted not to be involved. That's unfair, my father argued. We're busy people. Too busy for your only grandchildren? Too preoccupied to assist your daughter after emergency surgery, yet not too busy to request money. I observed. I believe that says everything about your priorities. My mother's face crumpled, whether from genuine emotion or calculated manipulation. At that point, I couldn't discern any more. Without your aid, we'll lose everything, she whispered. I lost my husband, I replied, my voice steady. My children lost their father. We persevered. You'll find a way to. 3 months post-surgery, my parents confronted the inevitable and sold their house to circumvent foreclosure. Jessica kept me informed about their situation as I kept my distance. They managed to secure a modest condo, dramatically downsizing from their expansive 4,000-square-foot lakefront property. My father reluctantly sold his boat at a loss, and they finally offloaded the timeshare for a fraction of what they paid. They're actually blaming you for their financial plight in front of everyone, Jessica divulged during one of her weekly visits. It's bizarre. They're telling anyone who'll listed that you abandoned them after promising eternal support. Let them talk, I responded, surprisingly indifferent. The truth speaks for itself, and it did. My extended family had mostly rallied around me after understanding the complete story. Even my father's sister, who had always sided with him, Diana, from my support group, helped me purchase a small 3-bedroom house in a friendly neighborhood, causing a dramatic improvement in my situation. The mortgage payments were less than my previous rent, and the twins finally had a backyard to play in. My side business of designing memorial websites grew, allowing me to minimize my graphic design work and focus on more meaningful projects. Olivia still assisted with childcare 3 days a week, but I had adjusted my schedule to spend more time with Ethan and Emily. Most importantly, I discovered a community where neighbors brought casseroles when we moved, and the support group organized playdates. Jessica became a genuine sister, no longer a competitor for parental love. Even Valerie from the hospital would occasionally visit with her children. Despite losing my husband and severing ties with my parents, I felt less alone than ever. 6 months post-surgery, a letter arrived from my mother, which I almost discarded, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was an apology I had never seen before. It spoke of her reflection on her behavior and how watching me build a life without their aid forced her to confront painful truths about her role as a mother. She admitted to being jealous of my independence and resilience, realizing I needed her differently than she wanted. She apologized for not supporting me when I asked them to care for the twins during surgery. The letter detailed their new modest lifestyle, selling luxury items, and my father taking a part-time job, without asking for forgiveness, only acknowledgement of her apology. Showing the letter to Jessica revealed their planned correspondence. My dad was initially opposed but seemed to change after a health scare. I wasn't ready to reply immediately, unsure of the letter's sincerity or potential manipulation. That night, I revisited family photos and saw old patterns my parents had hidden in their roles as perfect parents. A year after surgery, I met my parents at a neutral cafe near my new home, feeling unfamiliar with their changed appearance and humbled demeanor. My father's usual bright posture was replaced by something gentler, while my mother dressed simply. As Jessica took care of the twins, we conversed without rushing into resolution. My father, unprecedentedly emotional, admitted to being a terrible father and grandfather, acknowledging their selfishness. My mother explained their family therapy journey, initially resisted, but ultimately transformative. Without making rash promises, I showed photos of the twins and shared about our new life. They listened attentively, not centering themselves. When my father inquired about knowing their grandchildren, I replied that it depended on their future actions. With short, supervised visits possible, I emphasized respect for their mother as crucial. Leaving the meeting, I felt assured in my boundaries and worth, ready to enforce them without apology, regardless of my parents' genuine transformation. I had evolved into a mother protective and clear in expectations.